Hey everybody, this is a quick little intro for the GB Tracker sort of explanation video where I go through how that thing functions, and we can check that out and try and figure out how that thing works. But a couple quick things I just want to say. I know I've been absent for a little while. I apologize for that. There's good reasons for it, I hope, I think. Well, we'll see. I'll explain it and you guys can decide. And there's just two more things that need to happen before I can really dive back into doing the YouTube channel stuff, which I'm dying to do, but there's just been a lot going on, a lot of crazy stuff's happening. But also, just before, I can't resist doing some little bit of audio geekery. So we'll get to the GB Tracker video in a second. That's something I taped a while ago back in Vermont, and it'll be available for everybody to check out. But while I'm here, you want to see the setup for recording in Topanga? Yeah, that might be kind of fun because we're recording some really cool stuff and people right now. It's really kind of amazing. So check this out. Ooh, that is the B3 named Aretha that is played by Ben Montench. He's playing on Grace's new record. Super grateful to have him involved. He's unbelievable musician. Like Grace is an amazing B3 player. There's amazing, and then there's Benmont. Like it's a whole other level. But this is how we're mic'd up here. The B3's in there. I've got the Leslie in here. He actually brought two of them, and I liked the tube one better for what we're doing. It was just a little grittier and darker and cooler sounding for the stuff we're going for. So I got two 160s on the top. I'm kind of doing ribbon mics for everything right now. I've just been loving it for everything, especially paired up with this old RCA tube console. We'll check that out in a second. Normally, I'd have a windscreen on here. I had to pull it off for Mama to do some vocals. But yeah, two mics on the top, and I would say 90% of the time, only those microphones get used. I have a mono one that's a little more retro sounding. So if we're doing like a mono sort of like Stax or Motown sound, I'd grab that mic, and then I have a mic for the bottom, pretty much never gets used. I don't even know why I put it up, but then there's two room mics. This is just our little dining room in Topanga, and these are some old vintage 414s. That they look like C12As, but they're actually 414s. It was right in that transition there. And even in a small room like this, the room mics make a huge difference. There's some stuff that needs to be more ambient, and so everything is mic'd up. We've got mic cables going to these little Ethernet converter boxes, and so I ran Ethernet cable, which is hiding way over here. I have it sort of put away for the moment, but here's all the Ethernet cable. These connect to these little boxes, and that like 120 some feet of Ethernet cable runs across the roof of the house and then comes out here. There's also an extension cable because there's crazy grounding issues between the circuit in the studio and the circuit in the house. So then here's those same Cat 5 cables. I got a little mouse hole, goes in the door there. And then here's my little Topanga control room. It's a total wreck right now, but that's just the reality of it. I don't have time to do hardly anything. Like, I barely have time to work on a record, let alone clean this room. So this is what you get. But yeah, so then it all shows up here. I've got little tie lines. Everything's going into this amazing magical device. Oh my God. Can't wait to talk about this thing some more. It's just unbelievable how musical and transformative the circuitry is on that thing right there. Well, you plug a ribbon mic into that and everything just makes sense. It's incredible. So it comes into here and goes through the little bit of outboard and stuff that I have here, track into the computer. There's a little GB Tracker. I've been using that to do some guitars and stuff. And so that's it. That's our setup for trying to finish this record. We're trying to be done here relatively soon, but can't go back to Vermont until we do. So that's what's happening in my world. A little glimpse of the current, record producer on the run setup, and I'll check back in once I get all this other stuff done and start doing more episodes. Until then, check out the GB Tracker. All right, see you soon. Hello everybody, I'm Eric Valentine from Undertone Audio. I'm excited to announce a new product that will be coming out shortly. It is the Undertone Audio GB Tracker and optional satellite unit that can pair up with it. So this is going to be a very quick little demo video to just explain what this thing is, what it does, and how you're supposed to use it. So this is essentially a guitar DI and reamp put together into one integrated system. This one has been set up to achieve, real transparency. This is a recording process I've used for a long time, where I set up a DI and a reamp when bands are tracking live, and I'm capturing a DI as well as the amp sound while we're recording. Then if I want to, I can go back and switch to a different amp, switch different microphones, I can change the sound, do whatever I want. I can edit the part with the DI, which is way, way easier to do. Editing the DI, if you have a lot of distortion on the sound, editing distorted guitar, way more tricky than editing the DI, so this allows you to do that. And then once you get everything edited, you can just record the amp sound back into the computer. So let me show you what's on the faceplate, how this thing works. Here is the input right there, that's where you plug your guitar in. Input gain, they are detented steps in 4 dB steps, and then a matching output gain. So as long as you match this up, so +6 and -6, then the level will be perfectly unity gain. And I put a huge amount of effort into making sure that would be the case. It was an unbelievable pain to get it right, but we got there, I believe. And so when you use this box, a lot of times the way I use it is I'll have a guitar that I want to use for a particular part. I have a bunch of amps in the room, out in the sound room. I'll go around and just plug the guitar into different amps, find the amp that I want to use, then set up with the recording setup. And I want to make sure that it sounds exactly the same once I'm going through the GB Tracker into the amp, as the same as when I plug directly into the amp with the guitar. Huge amount of effort went into that. I think this thing is totally invisible sounding. It really, really came out great. So you can match up the levels here. Most of the time you'll probably be in this setting where it's the lowest input gain. If you're playing hard at all, that's probably what you want to do, so you don't clip the DI signal into the computer. And you just match it with the output gain, and then it'll be identical to just plugging your guitar straight into the amp. So then you have a switch here that is live versus DAW. So when you're playing live, you just flip the switch up. The signal from the guitar goes directly to the amp. There's no latency and any of that stuff. It feels exactly like you're plugged straight into the amp. And then once you want to reamp it, you just flip the switch down. The DI that's captured in the computer can go back in line level into the back of the unit, and then that gets fed to the amp instead of the live guitar at the exact identical level. That, of course, requires that you have everything calibrated correctly on your A to D and D to A converters. I can't do that for you, so you're going to know how to do that in order to make this thing really work perfectly. So then you have a phase control, and that comes in handy once you start using this. You can use the GB Tracker and satellite units, you can see it right there, to actually combine a bunch of amps and mult the guitar signal to multiple amps. And you can play with the phasing to make sure all the amps are in phase. And then ground switch. This is really, really important. When you start having multiple electronic audio devices plugged in, you can get ground loops. And so this has a transformer on the output of it that will isolate the grounding and make it so it eliminates any ground looping. You can hear right now straight away. Not so awesome. It's an amazing tool for when you're starting to use multiple amps, or even just dealing with the ground looping between the audio devices that you're recording with and the amp itself. And then output gain, as I said, it's really designed to just match the input gain. You have higher input gain settings if you're playing something softer, if you're doing like a lighter finger picking thing, you want to just have more level going into the computer. You can set a higher input gain and then match the output gain to it to maintain that unity. Every single step of this thing was carefully calibrated, so they would all match and be, unity gain. Exact same level going in is what goes out. I want to look at a typical signal flow setup for this thing. So let me pull this up on the screen. We can check this out. Okay, so we'll just look at this part of it first. This is the basic setup. Guitar goes into the input gain control. Here's the 3 switches. You've got the live versus DAW, you've got phase control and grounding, then the output gain control, and then you come out of this jack, it is labeled 2 amp, and go to your guitar amp. Then you'd have a mic on the amp, that goes into a mic preamp. That microphone signal goes into your DAW recording device. And at the same time, on the back of the GB tracker, you have an output that will send the DI signal to your computer, and then you have a line input jack, which is from the DAW recorder back in. And then the live versus DAW controls which is being sent to the amp at any given time. So that's the basic setup. Go to the amp, you go to the computer with the DI signal, there's a line output from the computer that goes back into the GB tracker, the microphone signal goes into the computer so you can capture the amp sound, and then on top of that, this is the optional satellite unit. So each of these, it's just a passive reamp style box, and so you have signal right here that says to satellite, and so it's just a mult of the signal that would be coming out of here, and so you can send that to a satellite unit. This is the back of a satellite unit, and so it says from tracker, so that signal comes in here. Set the level, you just match the gain to where you had the input set on the input here, then it will be exactly the same as plugging your guitar into that particular amp, directly into that amp. Then you have an output that goes to the amp. You can isolate the grounding, and then you can just keep daisy chaining, just adding more satellites, and so you can keep multing to more and more amps. So here's the signal passes on to another satellite unit, then you come out of there to another amp, put a mic on, that goes to another preamp. You can record a whole bunch of amps, no ground loops, play with the phasing, all of that stuff. And these things are passive, so you don't have to plug them in, you don't have to chase them around with some sort of power supply or anything. All it takes is an XLR cable going from either the previous satellite or the GB tracker unit to feed signal into that, and then it feeds the amp. Easy peasy. Okay, so here we go. Let's use this thing a little bit. Check it out. I am going to play guitar. Here it comes. I've got a painfully simple guitar part I can play so I don't screw this up. Here we go. So I'm set live. I'm going to hit record on my computer. Bam. I'm rolling on the computer. This is me just tracking the way I would if I had a band going. Okay, good enough. So now that we've played it in the computer, we can hear what we got. I'll turn off the DI signal for now. We're just listening to the amp. It's just Fender Esquire going into a Vox AC15 with a 57 on it. Super simple, very straightforward. Here's the cool thing. So now that we've captured the DI, I can play back this DI. Here it is right here, going to a line output of my Universal Audio Apollo 8 thingamajig, and send that back to the amp. So I just put this on DAW. The line out signal is going into the GB tracker DAW input. And when I hit play, you'll hear the amp play again as if I was playing the guitar live. So now, here's the cool thing. You can go in, look how much easier it is to edit these parts if you wanted to. When it's really distorted like this,
you can't really see the detail of what's being played the way you can with the DI. So I could go in here and edit some stuff. I'd be comping stuff together. It's really easy to see where things start and end, and you know, put together a final performance track and then reamp that. The other thing that I really like, you can do some processing. Here's a little EQ, nice mid-range boost. Love boosting mid-range on guitar, and it's great to do it in the computer because it doesn't add any noise. It's super clean. It just adds mid-range to the original sound. So now we can hear it, a little extra mid-range on there. Kind of makes this Esquire sounds like it maybe has like a P90 in it or something, just, you know, that cool mid-range bark in there. It's still, the sound is a little bit thin in there, I would say. It would be nice to add something to it. So let's add another amp. That's where this satellite unit would come in. This one actually doesn't have the markings on it yet. We're just finishing the prototyping phase of this, so we're just gonna have to pretend this looks exactly like that. And we're gonna add another amp. So I have another amp set up. It is an old magnetone, so we can do something a little bit crazier, add some bottom end to this. And so the satellite unit is now sending to the magnetone, and we'll get a cool low-endy guitar sound just coming off the DI that I captured. That's being fed back into the GB tracker, and then it daisy chains into the satellite unit. The satellite sends there. We have the ground isolation, keeps the ground loop from happening. Let's see what that amp sounds like. We'll record them both at the same time. Here we go. We got our final sound. We're capturing it. Okay, so now I can mute this, listen to what's just been captured, and not have the amps blasting in the room. Right now it's all in the same room for me. So we have the original AC-15 sound. We have this crazy magnetone sound, dark, heavy. And so that's all stuff that you can do well after the fact. After you've tracked a bunch of stuff, the band's gone home, maybe they've flown back to wherever they're from, and the guitar sound wasn't nailed, you can go back, put it through different amps, layer amps, edit stuff, do whatever you need to do, get the perfect guitar sound, print it, and you can still have that option way down the road, and get it right. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get it right. So there it is, GB Tracker. Amazing options for capturing, editing, comping, and ultimately dialing in a perfect sound. It's my favorite way to track guitars and bass. I'm going to be using this thing on everything I do from here forward. It's one of those things. When it came up, it's like, okay, this has to be in my life every time I make a record from now on. So there it is. I love it. I hope you'll enjoy it too. All right, bye. And also, keep an eye out for a subsequent video where I'm going to do a deep dive into the tweakiness of the tone stuff with this box. Because we all know guitar players can get super tweaky with their guitar tone, and there's some very important subtle details in there. Not important to go over in a quick overview like this video, but for people that really, really want to dive deep and get the absolute most out of this box and know exactly what to expect when you're trying to get the perfect guitar sound of all time, I'm going to have a video for that. We're going to go deep. So keep an eye out for that. All right.